G2 versus FlyQuest. The two best Western teams have played against each other, and the winner of the series made it to playoffs. This was the second game of the series, in which we got to see this mid matchup. Aurora versus Annie, Caps laning the Aurora side of the laning phase. This lane is highly mechanically dependent, okay? So normally reviewing these kinds of lanes is not as fun because you're going to be mainly talking about mechanics. However, one thing that I think a lot of players miss, which Caps did in this laning phase as well, is that you can optimize a lot of things around you, macro-wise, in order to find positive exchanges. Even if those exchanges are mechanically based, you can do things to maximize for your ability to get as consistently good results as possible. And as you will see, Caps in this laning phase failed to do it a lot of times. This VOD is going to be mainly focusing on Caps' mistakes, because Quad happened to play very, very good laning phase up until the first reset. But even for Quad, he will miss out on a lot of opportunities to extend his advantage even further. So this VOD is really good. And let's begin with what's happening here when it comes to movement, when it comes to wave, when it comes to the first patterns that we are seeing. So, a lot of things happened here. I will go back. Caps is arriving to lane from the side, and look at Quad's movement, okay? I want you to see this. He will constantly click into Caps, facing him, but he will not commit with an auto attack. And he will do this all throughout the laning phase, not just here. The idea of this is to fake your auto attack animation as Annie whenever you face Aurora, hoping that Caps will cast his Q on that timer, and then once his Q goes out and you dodge it, is where you can look to properly trade. That's the idea of what he's doing with his movement, and you will see it. So here, he makes those like little tiny clicks into Caps, and he will continue to make them. So here he makes another one. Then here, once again, we have another one. And then, at some point, it works. Caps actually ended up casting his Q on one of those fakes from Quad, and therefore now Quad will have a trade timer on Aurora's Q cooldown. So, what could have Caps done better to not allow Quad to just bait out his Q this easily? Couple of things. First of all, wave management. Caps is actually doing well when it comes to wave management, because he is auto-attacking this minion right away. He's somewhat pushing the wave into Annie, which is a really good thing to do level 1 in this laning phase. And that's because you want to force your opponent to interact with the wave as well. You don't want this Annie to be allowed into constantly clicking sideways and backwards and do whatever she wants. You want her to actually have to deal with the wave as well, have to auto-attack it from time to time, have to be locked in auto-attack animation as well. And then on the auto-attack animation of Annie is where you can trade. So by hitting the wave constantly and putting the pressure in form of having minions advantage and therefore having a level 2 advantage, that is going to be quite a long period of time during which Caps would have a level 2 advantage, assuming that Quad would not interact with the wave at all. By putting all of that pressure, he would eventually force Annie to hit the wave as well. And then once she's hitting the wave is where you can try to play for your Q. So he's doing a good job there. Another good job that he's doing is he is making it so that the minions are not dying on the same timer. So he will intentionally hit one minion a couple more times extra so that it's at this point in its HP, whereas his melees are maybe this much HP. This is important because you don't want to end up in a situation where you have to last hit the opposing minion, and during that, Quad has a timer to last hit one of his minions, because then you're just going to miss out on a timer on which you normally want to trade. So it's important that minions on your side of the lane are dying on different timers than on Quad's side of the lane. So all of that is good. What's not good though is, first of all, the Q usage in the first place. There was no specific timer on which his Q was used. Once again, he should have waited either for Quad to start hitting the wave, which he would have done eventually, or otherwise he would be losing the laning phase by the second wave, because Caps would just have a level 2 advantage over him. Another thing that he should have done differently is click to this side of the laning phase. The positioning is bad by Caps, and this is a mistake that he will continue to make throughout the game. It's important that you recognize as a laner, no matter if it's bot, mid or top, how you're positioning relative to the wave and how you position relative to your opponent. So the wave is like that. Caps is standing here and Quad is here. You're standing across from Quad relative to the wave. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because Quad has an easier time standing a further distance away from you. Because if he, let's say, were to click like that, he would still be within the range of the wave, but he's creating a distance away from you. When you throw your Q on Aurora, it works in almost the exact same way as Orianna Q or Israel Q, where your ability to land the skill shot is highly based on the speed at which the skill shot travels. Your Q travel speed is quite slow, which means that if you're standing 625 units away from your opponent, then your opponent will have a lot more time to react and therefore dodge your ability, in comparison to if you were to be standing only 300 units away from you. And it's because your travel time speed on your ability has a huge impact over your chances of landing it. So if you can optimize your movement by standing in opposition, meaning that you're standing in a straight line away from Quad, If you can do that, then you should go for it. Because then if Quad wants to adjust his positioning so that he creates distance between himself and you, he can no longer run like that to the side and still be within the range of minions. Now he has to run all the way back, which majority of times he just won't be doing. In summary, Caps is mispositioning, and then Caps is also throwing his Q on a bad timer. His wave management is fine, but he is not including the theory of not having or not feeling pressured to throw your Q right away. He should be definitely a lot more patient. On the other side, Quad is playing perfectly. Yeah, so here, this Q is bad, and now Quad is just going to chase Caps down and play on his Q cooldown, and take a positive exchange against him. And even within this exchange, there's a lot of fun things and details that you can look at. So first of all, the click downwards by Caps was odd here, but whatever, I don't care so much about this. I assume it was a misclick. What wasn't a misclick though, is that after auto-attacking this minion, he clicked into Quad, which might seem weird because this exchange is supposed to be losing. But there is actually a very, very good reason for why he did this, and Quad recognized it as well. And the reason for that is because Aurora wins extended exchanges into Annie, because of her passive, because of her auto-attack damage, and because her Q is coming back up in this case, although that doesn't matter so much. It's mostly about the passive and the auto-attack damage. And so by clicking into your opponent, as you get CC'd, you make it so that if Quad were to overextend after throwing out his Q and auto-attack, so he goes for Q and auto-attack here, if he were to overextend for another auto-attack, then Caps would be out of his CC by that point, and therefore he would be able to chase down Quad and take a net positive exchange against him, or maybe a neutral exchange. And Quad recognized it as well, because after throwing the auto attack, he's clicking all the way back, which doesn't feel natural when you play Electrocute on Annie, but this is actually the best play for Quad, because if he were to overextend, then once again, Caps would be given a very good trade timer. So both players, very high level of understanding when it comes to that exchange in particular. And then we have the same mistake from Caps. More or less the same mistake. This is a little bit different because there's a specific timer on which he's throwing his Q, which is going to be this range minion. But even then, I would want him to be positioning more upwards, because once again, you don't want to be standing across from Quad. When Quad is here, you want to be here. You don't want to be standing to the side. And then Quad, on the other hand, should be clicking like that. I don't know why he isn't exactly doing it. And so Caps misses his Q again, and then Quad is gonna play on his cooldown again, or at least that's what you would hope should happen. But instead, Quad opted to throw his Q onto the wave and value the wave push over trading with Caps. I personally disagree, because Caps doesn't have a significant minion advantage by this point, and it's not like by trading with him on this timer with your Q and auto attack, instead of queuing the wave, you're gonna lose level 2 advantage that harshly. I think Quad is panicking here a little bit by opting to hit the wave rather than hitting Caps. But then once again, these are like small pedantic problems that I'm arguing against. In the end, Quad is playing almost perfectly in this laning phase so far. Almost perfectly. Caps' Q is coming back up again from cooldown. I would argue that he should be clicking like that again and looking to take an exchange. So then we are now on the second wave. Caps has a trade timer again. He goes for it. He's positioning well. The problem though is there's two small problems, okay? First of all, you should probably just click a little bit further forward before throwing your Q. And then the second thing is you should wait for auto attack animation, because that's what Quad is gonna have to do at some point, because this minion is gonna die, and it's dying on a different timer than this one. So you're gonna have a timer to trade on, and Caps isn't exactly going for it, which I kind of dislike. Now Quad hits level 2, Caps is also level 2, but his Q is on cooldown. So once again, he's forced into taking a negative exchange. And this is also where Quad made his first mistake. I would say that this E usage from Quad is bad. So Quad throws his Q, then his auto attack, this is all really good, but then he casts his E on the auto attack of Aurora. The problem that I have with that is that now, because Aurora's E is up, because her Q is up, and because your E on Annie just went on a 12-second cooldown, what it means for you now is that Aurora will have about 7 seconds of a window where she can take an exchange onto you, and you can't do anything about it. And the exchange is always like heavily positive for Aurora. And so what I would say would be better for Quad to do is eat the damage from the auto attack, not proc your Electrocute, just Q and auto attack like you did before, and just click away. And yes, you're gonna eat some extra damage, but at least you're not gonna be playing on a timer on which Aurora can trade onto you, take a hyper positive exchange like 300 HP plus, and you cannot do anything about it because your E just went on a 12-second cooldown. All this to say that Quad is likely making a mistake. So given what I've said, what you should see now from Caps is looking to click forward. once again in opposition, he's mispositioning again, and then take a heavy exchange onto quad. Also, another thing that I forgot to mention is that Caps should be happy to take auto-attack exchanges. I kind of mentioned it when he was CC'd here on the first skill rotation from quad with the stun, but it also applies to any other point in the laning phase. If you can auto-attack quad a couple of times before Qing or Eing, it's considered to be a good idea, unless you're only throwing out your Q. If you're only throwing out your Q, then you should probably focus on landing your Q first and then auto-attacking. But if you're going for Q and E rotation, and Quad cannot do anything to turn around, then you should auto-attack first. Or if you're going only for the poke with E, as Aurora, then you should also auto-attack first and then use E as a disengage. As you can see, Caps is mispositioning, Quad is playing perfectly around his positioning once again. Very intentional, at least I would hope so, that he is standing across from Caps relative to the wave, about 600 units away. This is like max range, and he's still within the range of this minion. So like he's able to get the minion, and both stand max range from Caps. This doesn't exist if Caps is in opposition to him. This is probably like the perfect example to illustrate the problem. If Caps is here, Quad cannot do that. He is too close. He would have to move to this side. But then once again, you match him. It's not that difficult. But Caps is just not thinking about it consciously throughout the laning phase. Oh, and then this E usage is also terrible. So this E usage makes me think that Caps doesn't play Aurora. Because one of the first things that you will recognize when you watch any good Aurora player is that they will cast their auto attacks a lot and then they will cast their E. So in this case, there is nothing that stops you from casting a couple of auto attacks and then Eing. Nothing. Quad is now gonna play on Caps' cooldowns again, the same old story. And even though this time he did the same thing as previously, or it might seem at least like it, where he is casting his E on auto attack animation from Aurora, this particular trade has one major difference. And the difference is that Aurora's E is on an 11-second cooldown. So you're trading your 12-second cooldown on a timer on which Aurora's E is at 11 seconds. What it means for you is that there is no window on which Aurora can trade onto you where you will not have your E back up. So this time, Quad is very much justified and it's very much the best thing he can do to cast his E on this particular timer, because you're not creating any windows for Aurora to trade on and therefore find a hyper positive exchange onto you, which was the case previously. Another thing to mention here, which doesn't matter so much, but it's also somewhat important, is that this auto attack from Caps is also different because it was proccing the passive of Aurora. So if you look again, I believe he had 2 stacks on Annie. Yes? So the auto attack was proccing the passive. So it's also a little bit different. Either way, Caps should be looking for an exchange here, and this is what he did. Quad didn't play that well at all, I would argue. So here you don't have to click forward on this timer. You should just click back and be okay with this. But instead he allows Caps to take a positive exchange onto him, which isn't good by Quad. Quad should not have been giving it to him. If Quad were to have his electrocute up, then it's a different story. But because he doesn't have his electrocute up, because his E is still on cooldown, and because he doesn't have to fight for any of those minions, going for this exchange and giving it to Caps, which is what he did here. Once again, if you look at his movement, he can create distance very easily. Like he can just continue clicking backwards and just juking like that. But he wanted to trade back instead. And this trade back is just bad, because you're trading unevenly and you're not gaining anything in return. Now Quad's E is coming back up, but it's also coming back up on the same timer as Caps' E. So Quad should feel happy again to take any exchanges that he wants, but on the other hand, he needs to also ask himself a question to what extent he wants to play for an advantage at this point. Because depending on that, Inspired and then Busio's movement, and I guess Buipo to some extent as well, is gonna be a lot different. Busio might look to roam mid on one of the waves. Inspired might look to place deeper vision, which I will talk about in a second. But you need to be able to communicate it now. It's very, very important that you do it, so that your teammates are just aware of what they should expect. The reality is that Quad is playing for an advantage. That's the thing. Caps is within lethal range of 2 rotations of Quad, and Aurora is also passively losing the laning phase from level 2, and then also level 3 onwards, until about level 6-7, which is where Aurora can somewhat look to fight back. With that in mind, what we should expect from Quad now is either playing for an advantage and looking to click forward a lot, looking to take exchanges. Ideally, those exchanges are timed with something that works, so like you don't want to just run into Caps here with your E and Q like a monkey. Instead, what you should probably do is poke him with auto attacks first, stack up your stun, and then take an exchange on a timer on which, let's say, Caps is locked in auto attack animation, or on which Caps has to lose something. And given that, let's see exactly what happens. Caps is playing very, very far back. He's not looking for the exchanges at all. And instead, what I think he's doing is he wants the wave to push into him. So he's clicking very, very far back, hoping that quad at some point looks to click forward and then EQ onto him. That's at least my theory. And then another thing is that quad could in theory be looking to trade on this melee minion dying. It's very clear that Caps is angling for it. And there is nothing stopping quad from playing to this side and then EQing on this minion. Because one of two things will happen then. Either Caps will lose the minion and take the exchange onto you. So instead of killing this minion with auto attack or Q or E, whatever Caps would want to do, probably Q, he will have to Q quad in this spot. So we have to trade onto him with Q and D. And in turn, even though the exchange is somewhat even for both sides, assuming that both sides land all of their abilities, quad is happy because he's denying an extra melee minion from Caps. And the alternative approach is wait for the stun and then take the exchange. Quad opted for the stun approach. The problem being that he's mispositioning here. So it might not look like anything to untrained eye, but quad made his biggest mistake in this game. He has a stun, he has E, he has Q. I assume he went W third, even though you can go Q sometimes. In this case, W is better because you're playing for an all-in, or not an all-in, but you're playing for a solo kill. So W should be better. And you have two melee minions that are dying. Quad should be right now in this spot and playing onto Caps and take the exchange. He has his E up, he has his Q up, he has his W up. This exchange is just hard winning for quad. Your jungler is next to you. Your jungler can walk up here to the river and just place a ward. Or places in this bush. He will do it if you ask him, 100%. Especially if he looks at mid and sees that Caps has this much HP left. But for whatever reason, quad just clicked back on this. And I cannot explain to you why. And not only he clicked back, but he also stood in the way of those two minions. This does not make any sense to me at all. By far the weirdest thing that I've saw in this VOD so far. And so now Caps, I don't want to say he's happy about the state of the laning phase because he still should be losing. And if you're wondering why quad isn't clicking forward even right now with his E and Q and W, I will not answer that because I don't know. I have no idea why he isn't trading. My theory is that he thinks that Trando is somewhere here, but the problem with that thinking from quad is that Skewmond would lose way too much on the first clear if he were to be hovering on this specific timer. Because even let's assume that the worst case scenario happens, okay? Quad walks up, looks to take an exchange, Trando is here, walks up, and kills quad, as quad is looking to take an exchange, okay? Fuck it. It's very unlikely to happen because Annie has a flash and then they don't have enough of CCs, but whatever. Let's assume that this happens. Even then, this is still game losing or like there's still a losing exchange for G2 because quad will TP first to lane. By that point, Raptors and the red buff will be taken by Inspired. Inspired will go for a bot invade with the bot prio. And then Annie will have tempo from it as well. So even the worst case scenario, where Trando is here, is almost game losing for G2. Trando is not allowed to skip camps. You cannot skip camps when your bot lane is getting fucked like that and your mid lane is losing. You cannot. So Quad is just misunderstanding the game, most likely, or he's playing scared, which I doubt is happening, because Quad is not that bad at the game. Once again, Quad should be trading, but he's refusing to do so. Instead, he's auto-attacking, and he continues to auto-attack, even though his E and Q and W are up. I have no idea why. No idea. And now Caps goes for a shitty reset. And this reset I don't fully understand to this point. And also don't understand the response from Quad, where Quad will now hard push this wave. Don't get me wrong, Caps will not lose anything by taking a reset on this timer. That's not my problem, because you have 2 range minions worth of advantage on blue side. Or I mean, right now you don't, but these range minions will not kill those range minions. So in turn you're gonna end up with 2 range minions extra on Quad side. But even then, not only you have a chance of denying your opponent a cannon minion if you get lucky, but also you will deny at least a couple of melee minions worth of experience. And gold. Whereas now, because Quad is pushing, or hard pushing this 4th wave, as you will see, Caps will not lose almost anything. So I don't understand the wave management from Quad, and then also the reset from Caps. Quad should be almost certainly slow pushing this 4th wave, and then hopefully he can crash the 5th, on which his jungler will play for a bot crab. So even if you want to argue that the bot crab is the reason, then you're gonna have an easier time playing for a bot crab with 5th wave crash and mid that is stacked up than you will by hard pushing the 4th, resetting and then TPing. At least that's what I would say. And then for Caps, I don't know the reset. I don't know what it's supposed to do. Because you're not gonna be contesting the crab thanks to this reset. Your bot lane is losing either way. And it doesn't put you in a better position when it comes to the laning phase. So like, I don't understand at all. I wish someone could explain this to me. Because I assume there is a great reason for why both of them are doing it. And I'm just missing out on something. But yeah, anyways, that will be it for the VOD. I'm gonna skip a little bit. You can see what exactly happened with this 4th wave. And yeah, that will be it. I've enjoyed reviewing this VOD, as always. And that would be it. Bye bye.